Welcome back to Book Your Imagination. My name is Anne. I am here today with Alanna McFall, who is a novelist, a playwright. She lives here in the Bay Area, and she has just released her debut novel, The Traveling Triple C, Incorporeal Circus. So I'm happy to have her with me today. Thank you so much, Alanna, for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me and having me.
All right, so let's start first with the novel. Give me the elevator pitch. What is the novel about?
See, I do like that I have a fairly easy condensed pitch. Two ghosts and a mime go on a road trip. It's two ghosts and a living mime are walking from New York to San Francisco because one of the ghosts' brother is who is still alive, is going to be married in a few months' time, and she wants to be there as part of sort of the process of moving on and making peace with her death. And yeah, she's got a couple of friends along the way. Nice. So yeah, a lot of different adventures and wild stuff that you see when you're literally going on foot across America.
Nice. So I'm going to start with two questions that we got from my viewers, and they're very similar, which is why I want to give you both questions at first, at the same time. From Charlotte Benson asks, what is the inspiration for the book? And then Jellicle asks, what made you decide to write about the ghost world versus other types of phenomenon?
So every time anyone asks me this question, I have to sort of go like, for a second, because I have to confess that it was genuinely a random prompt generator.
Really?
Yes, for a couple years at that point, when I was writing the first draft in 2014, had been participating in National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, which is a month-long sort of online challenge to try and write 50,000 words in the month of November. And it was, a month or two before that, I was kind of toying with ideas, and it was like, okay, I'm going to find a random prompt generator and do some writing exercises. It would pop up like a setting, a premise, and it's like, okay, what could I make of that? And it was really just sort of a popcorn practice sort of thing.
Wow.
And it popped up something about road trips and ghosts, and that one caught my imagination. Like, yeah, we think of ghosts as relatively stationary, like they're haunting this one area, haunted house, haunted hospital, sort of the idea that these ghosts linger. But the idea of, especially these days, and I know a lot with me personally, a lot of people's families and loved ones are spread out over incredible distances. I am originally from Minnesota. When I was writing this, I was living in New York while my family was back in Minnesota, and then I was in a long-distance friendship, eventually became a relationship with my now fiancé who lived in Canada. So kind of the idea of having loved ones all around, and just thinking about, okay, if you were a ghost and had unfinished business that was tied to your loved ones, what if they're far away from where you died? Hey, that would be a reason to start moving and start traveling. And the idea of this, unfinished business tying into, there could be reasons to travel. People are surprised when I bring this up and I say that the mime was actually not one of the randomly generated elements.
Really?
Yeah, so the mime was actually already something I had been toying with for separate ideas, where I've never practiced or studied mime myself, but I've always been kind of intrigued by it. It's just like absolute condensed physical comedy. And people kind of joke about it, and it's like, you've probably seen more parodies of mimes than actual mimes.
True.
But the idea of like, okay, what would a performer who was doing mime be working with? What sort of life would build up around this? And then sort of the idea of, okay, well, a mime is interacting with invisible elements. What if they were interacting with invisible people, like ghosts?
Oh, wow.
And kind of the two separate ideas percolating sort of meshed together, and then I ended up writing the first draft for National Novel Writing Month in 2014.
Wow. Have you ever seen a ghost?
I have not. In in terms of, my own feelings about the afterlife, I definitely do think of a more sort of ambiguous spiritual terms. I do think there is, a sense of people as sort of essence, spirit, what have you, in the universe after they pass away. But I don't tend to think of them as concrete as the ghosts I use in fiction, who are basically just people without bodies. So it's like, okay, my feelings about ghosts are a lot more amorphous in the mist.
So I do want to talk about the characters. And we had some people who had some questions about Cindrika, who is the mime. Carrie Louise reads, that's her channel, her name is Carrie. So Carrie wants to know what was the inspiration for including a character with a disability.
Yeah, so the character of Cindrika is mute, and she is homeless, and it's kind of, she's a street performer who performs mime, but then, beyond that, she is just trying to make it. And I think that was, having Cindrika be mute was definitely early in my decision-making process of how I was going to build this character, because just sort of thinking about kind of the cute mute trope, where you have sometimes in like comedies or fairy tales, or you'll have like the little sidekick who speaks in like squeaks or is just emoting and doesn't actually say anything, as kind of a charming trope. But also thinking like, okay, but what is their life actually like? And having someone who, yes, she's performing all of these, silent comedy, and that's a very important thing, that she's able to still perform comedy in a way that she finds important, but at the same time, she still has to go about life in a world that is not at all accommodating to people who can't speak. So trying to sort of thread that, yes, she's still putting on, the cute mute performer tropes, but at the same time, she has an inner life that is tied to, this fact that she has to interact with the world that she can't speak with, and especially since she sees the dead, sees these ghosts, she's interacting with two worlds. And I suppose you could even say three, considering how much of life as a homeless person is so completely disconnected from, what we think of as like everyday civilized life, but trying to live on the streets is a entirely different reality that I will not pretend to understand on a deep level.
Right.
So yeah, she's kind of someone who's stuck in between in a lot of different worlds, and trying to make an impact, find her voice without finding her voice.
Interesting. Gaia from Gaia Athena wanted to know, did you do any research into being deaf or sign language, or did you speak with anyone who is from the deaf community to write about deafness, muteness, sign language for the character of Cindrika?
So, unfortunately, I did not. I did a bit of online research, but did not speak specifically with people from the mute community. Cindrika is not deaf. But
I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
yeah,
it's okay.
that was the question, and I didn't even catch it. Okay.
But yeah, she is mute, and I was trying to definitely convey respectfully and with awareness, but I will admit I did not communicate enough with the disabled community who would have lived Cindrika's specific experiences. And yeah, I think kind of the only thing that was really important to me in writing her sort of journey was that even by the end she was never going to speak verbally, because we see too many stories where the end is dramatically overcoming their disability.
Oh, right.
And it's like, no, she reaches a place of peace. She comes to the end of a character arc, but she's still disabled, and that is part of her reality, and it's not a part of her reality that makes her happy ending any less happy.
That's great. the three primary characters are really diverse. So you have Chelsea. The story is told in first person from Chelsea's point of view, and she is Chinese American and gay. There's Carmen, who is Hispanic and straight, and then Cindrica, who is African American, mute, and she's bisexual. Mm-hmm. Did you set out to write this diverse group of characters? Did you focus on the diversity, or as you started discovering who these characters were, did this just come out of the writing process?
Yeah, so I feel like it trying to remember back to what I was thinking, when I was throwing this together for NaNoWriMo. But yeah, I feel like at the beginning it was important for me to have these sort of diverse perspectives. And Chelsea in particular, it was okay, she's kind of the closest to me. And it's okay, but I want to have her in a somewhat different demographic than I am. I am white, I'm bisexual, but having, just sort of representing a wider range of diversity, especially if you're gathering all of the people in New York and just taking a random sampling, you're not going to end up with 3 straight white people.
Yeah. Same in San Francisco.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah, and I feel like, really thinking about influences, I cannot remember the author's name right now, but the book Good Fairies of New York.
Oh, okay.
Didn't really connect the dots until just this moment, but an important one for me for having supernatural elements mixing together derived from different ethnic groups and different cultures. Mm-hmm. And being okay, there are going to be ghosts that are in the Hispanic community. There are going to be ghosts that are upper class. There are going to be ghosts that are lower class. And, the unique human who can speak to these ghosts is homeless. And, yeah, just trying to blend these different identities together and all tied around this afterlife where hopefully there's not as many of these boundaries in the way.
Let's talk about the ghost world for a little bit, because mm-hmm. that was so well defined in terms of what they can and can't do. And, the reason they're walking to San Francisco is because you get in a car, you get in a plane, and it takes off and you do not move with it. Mm-hmm. It just goes right through you. And there were a number of other rules about being homeless. Not homeless, being a ghost, where you're wearing what you died in. You can't mm-hmm. take off your coat if you were dying in a coat, or your hospital gown. There's one guy in a hospital gown. I just think of him with, the open in the back for your afterlife would be horrible. Mm-hmm. So how did you come up with this entire rule structure for your ghost world?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of it was just sort of starting with, tropes around ghosts and then trying to logic out what that would be. Because I feel like, with ghosts, it's, fairly common, especially in, horror stuff, to have the mark of how they died or something of the like, if it's some sort of guilt specter, it's going to be, oh, you shot me, look, here are the bullet holes. And, yeah, sort of trying to expand that out and follow the chain of, okay, is it always that they're going to look like they did exactly at the moment they died? Okay, so are they stuck wearing what they were wearing? Okay, if they could take off their clothes, at what point is that a separate object? Because this world doesn't really have ghost objects, it's just, people. So, I was trying to think okay, if they're able to take off their coat, can they set down the coat? And then what is the coat then? No, you can't do that. You don't have, there aren't ghostly objects, so the coat is part of them, so therefore they can't take it off. And yeah, just trying to sort of work through the different ways there. And definitely a perverse part of me liked having the body horror of
Yes, there was body horror.
Oh yeah. Yeah, even the main character, on the cover, it was very important to me that you see the blood coming down her leg.
Right.
Because Chelsea, she was hit by a train. Accidental death, fell in front of a subway train, and so her, let me see if I can remember what side it is. I believe her right side. Yeah, her right side, her face is smashed, her arm hangs at an odd angle, and she's got blood running down her. So that is what she looked like the exact moment that she passed away. And yeah, kind of having that also, symbolically as a physicalized, she is carrying her trauma with her. There is no way that goes behind. The character of Carmen has bullet holes in her chest. It has a grouping of bullet holes. And she doesn't really talk about what's going on, but she's literally wearing her trauma. And though even in scenes that aren't about that, because there are a lot of scenes of just the three of them chatting as they're walking down the road, you can't forget that they're still literally wearing it. It's a part of them. And
interesting.
Yeah. So that was an interesting part for me aspect for me to play with. And then again, the perverse body horror part of me expanded that with some side characters who get a little more gruesome.
For sure. So, the ubiquitous they say there are only 7 stories. And, like the hero's journey, the redemption, and that kind of thing. And this is definitely a road trip story. Were you thinking about a road trip when you started to write this? Were you thinking like, I want to do a road trip?
I think so. I think, I wanted to have a physical distance that these characters had to traverse while they were trying to take this emotional distance to go from being very conflicted about their deaths, their situations, to being able to sort of find peace. And I really do like road trips just as in the real world, I do enjoy road trips. But in a storytelling perspective, because there's room for so much downtime, and I'm a sucker for domestic, fuzzy, let's just have the characters interacting and enjoying each other's company for a bit. And that's something that I feel like is kind of woven into the format of a road trip, is that there is time in between the events. So that was very important to me that, both I and the reader got to just hang out with these people for a bit and, talk about, hey, what did you think of your funeral? And stuff like that. And
fun topics we all want to talk about on a road trip.
Yeah. Did any of your organs get donated? And all that stuff. But yeah, so both being able to have that physical distance for them to take their journey through, and also, just being able to grow and bond together. It was definitely a goal of mine that no matter where these 3 started, they were going to end as friends.
All right, the last thing we want to do is the drawing for those of you who entered questions. So we have our Queen of Everything mug and the names in here, and I'm going to let Alanna pull this. We're going to have 2 drawings. So,
alright. So the first copy of Traveling Triple C Incorporeal Circus is going to Gaia Athena.
Yay! All right, cool.
All right, and the second is going to be going to Charlotte Benson.
Congratulations to Gaia Athena and Charlotte Benson. I will be in touch with you and get your address. You will have an autographed copy of the Traveling Triple C Incorporeal Circus. Thank you for watching.